Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Month in Review. So this is a series where I talk about all the new to me board games I played during the month, and I rank them from my least favourite all the way up to my most favourite. So I have a massive 21 games this month, and as usual there's a big discrepancy in the types of games I've played. We've got some very light family weight games all the way up to some pretty heavy and crunchy Euros, and everything in between. And alternatively, we've got some very pretty much brand new games and also some old ones going all the way back to the 70s. So without further ado, let's get started on the list. So at number 21, which is my least favourite game this month, goes to Hidden Leaders. So this actually is the latest game on this list. It's pretty much hot off the presses. Now this is a hidden role, or at least a secret identity tug of war style game, where at the start of the game everyone's going to get a hidden leader, and those hidden leaders are going to have some kind of goals they want to reach for, all associating to this kind of tug of war or push and pull style track that's in the centre of the table. So if you have, say, an undead leader, you want to be pushing these tokens to the undead area on this track. Something you want to have, one token in front of the other one you want to have the other token in front, or something you want to have them right next to each other. So you're always constantly adjusting the situation and the position of these tokens to suit your needs. I suppose you're trying to work out what the other people are going for, because you've got a kind of a backup plan that you need to go for by, if you have the same objective as another player, then you need to have the most cards of that type to break that tie. I quite like the concept of this game, and it looks absolutely fantastic. As you say, this game is wonderfully produced. The artwork is out of this world. It looks great. However, I thought the gameplay had some serious issues. I thought this was beyond tactical. There was no degree of forward planning here. It was a constant back and forth. You play something, your opponent will do the exact opposite and move it back to where you didn't want it to be. So you didn't really feel like you were getting anywhere, and it felt like you were kind of swimming through treacle and just going through the motions and just seeing what happened by the time the game ended. And ultimately, those style of games aren't for me. I need at least some degree of forward planning, and this game just didn't have that at all. So unfortunately, despite looking wonderful, this was kind of all bells, or all sizzle and no steak at all for this one. So unfortunately, Hidden Leaders was my least favourite game of the month. At number 20, I have Dice City, which is a pretty light little tableau builder, little engine building dice rolling game, as you're rolling these dice and then putting them on these different sections on this grid. And you can buy upgraded cards to trigger different things when you land on those spots in the future. And then you're trying to claim these contract cards, and there's even a bit of take that and things you can mess around with the other players. I think this game lacked quite a lot in terms of mitigation. So you're pretty much quite a big subject to the luck of the dice rolls in this one. There were some other things you could do. I think you could take off dice you've already put on the board and manipulate the spot of another one. But I didn't quite feel like it was enough. There wasn't quite enough avenues to go down in this game, I thought, and it just felt a little bit forgettable for me, to the point where I'm struggling to remember much about the game at all. So yeah, not one for me, and I thought this one did have not too many plays or not much life in it to keep me coming back to it. So unfortunately, Dice City was a bit of a miss for me. At number 19, I have another pretty new game with Namiji. So Namiji is actually the successor game to Tokaido. So Tokaido did pretty damn well a few years ago, Anton Bowser design, as you are going kind of a point-to-point movement along this kind of trail across, I think it's Japan, and you're visiting on different locations on the way and getting kind of set collection bonuses. You're trying to build these panorama kind of paintings and things. This one was pretty much the same thing as Tokaido, with a few small tweaks, and I have to say I don't think those small tweaks were better than the original. I did actually leave this game feeling like I think I'd rather play Tokaido. It was just a little bit simpler. I think it was a bit faster, and to be honest, I think it was a bit more fun. So this game uses that kind of ratchet or time track system where you can go as far as you want, but you can never go back on yourself. And as long as you go farther, then everyone behind you keeps taking turns until they catch up with you. The problem we had in this game, and maybe this was just the approach we took, was that we never really felt the incentive to jump ahead. It was always crawling along, which meant that the decisions were kind of taken out of our hands, and we didn't really have that urge or desire to push on further, which I think is a crucial part you need in a game like this. I think of games like Glenmore, which is on my shelf here. This uses a very similar system where you can go as far as you want, but you can never go back on yourself. That one, you kind of end up jumping tiles and tiles and tiles ahead, because the ones sat there are so good and you're willing to sacrifice your turns to get that tile, This one just completely, that part of the game was just void. It wasn't there for me. And the rest of it was just generic stuff that felt a bit dated for me. It didn't do anything new, and it felt like a game that was 10, 15 years old. At number 18, I have another game that felt a little bit dated for me. This is Aladdin's Dragons. So this one, I think I played the 2009 version, but I think there is an earlier version than that. And I'm not sure what the differences are between the two. But this is like a worker placement style game, purely with cards. Cards are your workers. You're basically picking up these different gems. You're blind bidding on trying to claim them. And then you are trying to almost pay like a ransom to the dragon in order to collect points. And then the points will give you a little kind of rule-breaking ability as well. That's pretty much the scope of the game. I felt like this was pretty much a paint-by-numbers worker placement style game. Again, it didn't have that extra hook or two to make it interesting, and it felt like, I don't know, it just felt a bit bland and sterile for me personally. So that's all I really have to say about Aladdin's Dragons. I thought it was fine at best, but just ultimately didn't hold up as, it didn't hold up to the series of great worker placement games out there, despite it being an immensely small box. At number 17, I have Hanabi, which is actually a former Spiel des Jahres winner. So this is an immensely successful game. It sold a ton of copies. And this was kind of one of those blind spots in my gaming experience where, for some reason, until this month, I'd never, ever played Hanabi. So generally, I do struggle with co-op games. I don't play too many of them. I just don't seem to get a lot of enjoyment out of them. And if I do, I kind of play them a few times and I'm ready to move on. So I wanted to try Hanabi because it's a completely different take on a lot of the traditional co-op games. This one you have a hand of cards, but you can't see your cards, only your opponents can. And then you are kind of giving clues to your teammates saying you have, 2 blue cards, or you have, X amount of these cards. And then you're trying to play these cards in order to build up these firework displays, and you have limited kind of opportunities to make mistakes. I thought the game was a bit of a one-trick pony, and I'm surprised so many people play this again and again and again. Maybe I was missing something, but I felt like once we played it a few times, we did reasonably well. I mean, I don't think we did terribly well, but good enough to be satisfied not to go back and play it again. And I just thought, I get it. I can see why people like it, but one that's not really ever going to call out to me to bring this one off the shelf and introduce it to anybody else. So at number 16, I have Mafia de Cuba, which is a strange social deduction game with a different aspect to it. One person's going to be a mob boss, and then at the start of the game, they're going to have this box of gems, and they're going to choose a certain amount of gems they want to take out, or they don't have to take any out. And then they're going to pass this box with not only these gems in, but also these kind of tiles in them, or these poker chips with different rolls on them. And then in order, each person's going to take something from the box and pass it on to the next player. It's going to get back to the mob boss, and then the deduction is going to begin. Who took gems? Who took this role? Who took that role? Some people are trying to help the mob boss. Some people are kind of undercover police, and if the mob boss kills them, then the policeman's going to win. And this game was quite cool because it did have that extra physical aspect to it, physically passing something around and having a bit of a puzzle to work out. And you know what? I think this game, functionally, it worked absolutely fine. I've got no issue with the way it worked. I will admit I am slightly fatigued with social deduction games, but this one is pretty damn quick, only played in about 15 minutes, so I would happily play this one, a couple of games and then move on to the next thing, because it's not too long of a commitment and it's pretty quick, and you can have some good laugh out loud moments as you accuse the wrong people, you end up shooting the person who's helping you, and that kind of thing. So I liked it. I think it's fine, but I think it's a bit one note. I think I'd play it not terribly regularly, but maybe a couple of times a year. I would happily get this one out and give it a go. At number 15, I have a recently fulfilled Kickstarter project with The Gardens, which is actually, I think it's by Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert, who are pretty damn good designers. And this is based on the botanical gardens in Australia, and is a kind of a little tableau building style game, or basically a tile placement game, but with cards. And the kind of unique thing about this game is that when you place these cards on one of these rows on your player board, and these are going to be like things such as trees or fountains or these lakes, when you place them, you're going to move a meeple to the card you just placed, but things that you cross along the way are going to score you points. Now that, for me, that sounded really cool. I like that idea of dragging this meeple back and forth at the best time in order to score the most points from it. I did quickly come to realise that this game is ultra light. I mean, this is almost as light as it gets. It's so simple. And I will admit I wanted a bit more from it. You know, I'm certainly not against light games. However, I do like light games to be quite minimalist. This one, it felt like, you know, it's a big box game, or at least a full-size box game. And it felt like there's a lot of other games like it out there. You know, think of games such as Isle of Skye or even Cartographers, where you have variable objectives, but generally you're playing the same type of game. This one is kind of one of those style games, but I thought it was fine. In fact, I think I like the solo mode of the game better than playing with anybody else. But I think this one certainly does have its glass ceiling. It's going to be an introductory game and not much beyond that. And it's a shame because the game itself looks wonderful. I love the visual look of this game. It looks completely different to any game out there. But ultimately, I wanted there to be more to it. I wish there was some kind of extra modules you can plug in to ramp up the complexity. The game does say it has those features by playing these more slightly more complex objective cards, but even they are really basic. So unfortunately, one that I wanted more from. At number 14, I have Incan Gold, or Diamant, depending on which version you have. So this is a push your luck style game, and one that I've been wanting to play for absolutely years. Another real kind of strong blind spot in my experience, or gameplay experience. I really like this one. I think it's a lot of fun as you are revealing cards as you go. And then you can either choose to stay in the dungeon or retreat from the dungeon and pick up gems as you go. You know, if you quit at the same time as another player, you share the gems, but if you quit on your own, you get all the gems. So simple, pure, push your luck. I love push your luck games. This one works well. Can't really fault it. Sometimes you would have circumstances that come out where before you know it, you know, you've gone bust and you're all out. And that can just happen, but rapidly quick, and I enjoyed it. I think maybe there's still some better push your luck games out there, but this one is certainly a decent one, and one of those games that I'd happily play any time because it's just pure fun. At number 13, I have El Capitan, which I'll be pretty surprised if you guys have heard about this one. This is actually a Wolfgang Kramer co-design with another designer who's not so known, but I know a couple of his games. This is an ultra dry Euro kind of economic style game, and an area majority style game. You have a bunch of different islands. You're collecting these cars to sail around these islands to go from place to place, and kind of put some influence on that. And kind of the more discs you have there, the more money you're going to take. Second place is going to get, you know, a smaller amount, and even some spots can kind of eliminate people from that area. And you can even erect these permanent structures on these areas, which means you always get income from those regions, which was quite cool. The resource management in this game, or at least the economic edge of this game, is quite tough for the first half of the game, as you know, funds are very limited, and every now and then you have to go back to this kind of hub spot and take a loan, which will give you obviously a great cash injection, but it means you have to pay it back with a premium. And you know, for the first half of the game, you'll find yourself forced to take these loans and just scrape by. By the end of the game, you start to be a bit more flush with your money. But I thought the gameplay experience was, although it works mechanically, you know, to a sound level, it wasn't a tremendous amount of fun, and there wasn't much individuality about this game. It felt quite generic, and that's quite rare to say for a Kramer game, because generally I'm a big fan of all his designs. At number 12, I have Agricola, all creatures big and small. And this might be one of the contenders for my surprise of the month. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this one because I've never actually played the main Agricola. And this, of course, is a condensed two-player version of the game. And this is all about trying to build up these different pens and put these animals in them. You've got like your sheep and your horses and things. And then you're getting points based on how many of these animals you have on your little player board. You can extend it. You're building the fences. It's a simple worker placement game. I mean, ultra basic worker placement. But I do have all the expansion material for it, which I think is a pretty big necessity for the game, because with a base game alone, there's very limited options on what you can do, and I can certainly imagine you burning out this game pretty quickly, and you'd want to start injecting some variability into the game. And fortunately, we do have that, so I am judging it based on that factor. But I was surprisingly charmed by this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, I was going in feeling a bit apprehensive because I am touch and go with Rosenberg games, but this one I ended up feeling quite positive about, and I've only played it once or twice, and I want to play it some more to solidify my feelings and thoughts on it. But certainly a pleasant game, and a different feel for a two-player game. At number 11, I have another pleasant surprise with Favour of the Pharaoh. So this is actually a Tom Lehman game. It's got the Egyptian theme to it, and this is basically a super Yahtzee variant. So this one you are ultimately trying to aim towards getting 7 of a kind in terms of these dice, but you only actually start with a few dice, and you're rolling them, you're unlocking abilities as you go. You're going to start with more dice, you're going to start with certain dice already locked into your scoring area, your mitigation tools, and these are really cool as well. There's a ton of variation. Every game is going to feel different with the different abilities on there out for collection. Only some people can get certain ones because there's limited options out there. And you know what? This is a hell of a lot of fun, and you could end up pulling off some great moves. Starting with bare bones and using your abilities to tinker things to your needs, aiming for different things each time to get new abilities. And that race to the finish is quite tense. And I think the reason this is high, and too much it could even go higher, is that I think I've played this game twice so far, and in both of those games, it's managed to deliver in terms of its excitement. So, of course, dice games are, by their nature, lucky, but both of these games have managed to kind of bring out the most of that luck and have everyone on the edge of their seat hoping to roll, and then being beaten by the other players and trying to beat them again. So that back and forth competition is really strong, and you know what, this is an absolute joy to play. Okay, so let's get into the top 10. So starting with my 10th game goes to Carnegie, which is actually another brand new game just fulfilled on Kickstarter, and I think it's out there on retail as well now. So this is actually the latest heavy economic euro by Javier Georges, who is a co-designer of Trois, which is one of my favourite games ever. And I will say this has been maybe my top 3 most anticipated games this year. And it's come at number 10. So naturally that's a little bit disappointing for me. And weirdly enough, after I read the rulebook for this game, I thought this game is going to be outstanding. I would be surprised if it wasn't going to be my game of the year, or at least a contender, because so solid. I couldn't think of anything about this rulebook I couldn't imagine or have any foresight to think what could be wrong with this game. It sounds absolutely brilliant. I got to the table, and for some reason it flatlined for me. Now there's nothing wrong with it at all. It works, mechanically as you'd expect a Javier Georges game to work. But I didn't have those, peaks and valleys. I didn't have any standout moments. There was no standout mechanism or something to make this game feel individual. And that for me felt a little bit disappointing, because I'd like to feel that most of my games in my collection have something special about them, and I couldn't really say that about Carnegie, unfortunately. So I'll briefly go about what this game's about. So you're basically trying to manage your company, and you have these player boards, which is basically like a side view of an office block. And you're moving all your different employees around and triggering the abilities of these different departments, basically. And you're manufacturing goods and then sending your workers off to different parts of the map. You've got a very simple degree of route building, which was probably one of the most lackluster parts of the game for me. But it also had lots of kind of track climbing, and you could bring your workers back and get bonuses. Lots going on here. I'm not going to go too much, just wait for my review on this one. But the one thing I probably did like about this game the most, or at least joint most, apart from the organising your business, was the player interaction, because you could actually quite carefully kind of select different actions to take when it will benefit you and not benefit your opponents, because this had that kind of Puerto Rico-esque system where you want to use actions at the right time so that you don't help your opponents as much as you're helping you. So that did come through quite strongly for me. I did like that element to the game, but the rest of it just felt generic for me. At number 9, I have Detective Club, which is a party game based on the Dixit formula, as you have these really whimsical cards. And this one has a wonderful twist on it that's guaranteed entertainment, that everybody, apart from one player, is going to know the secret word, and then you're going to start playing these cards down, and then obviously the person who does not know the special word has to play cards down, but pretty much guess on the theme that the other people are going for. And then in turn order, everyone is going to explain why they've chosen their cards. And when it gets to the person who doesn't know, they have to completely wing it and just make things up on the fly, and hopefully, completely pull the wool over their opponent's eyes. What a great game this is. This is so silly. It's a lot of fun. If you want something that's a little bit, very similar, but still different from Dixit, because maybe you just want some variation in your collection, then I would think, you're pretty much guaranteed to enjoy Detective Club. At number 8, I have Rustling Leaves by Paolo Mori. So this is an ultra light roll and write style game that actually comes with 4 different maps, or 4 different types of sheets you can play with, all represented by a different season. And all you're going to do on this game is you're going to roll a pair of dice, and the pip values on those dice is going to show the grid that you're going to, or a square that you're going to draw on your player sheet. So if you roll a 2 and a 2, you're going to draw a 2x2 grid, or a 3x4, you do a 3x4 grid, and you're going to rotate that however you like, and you're going to basically draw that and encapsulate a bunch of different shapes, and then tick off all of one type of shape in the grid that you've just drawn. And all those different symbols are going to score in different ways. Some of them will combo together, some have like a push your luck mechanism, some will score you negative points, some will score you points based on if they're never in a grid. So it's really simple fun. It's 15 minutes, and the decisions you have in this 15 minutes are pretty strong, to be honest. In lots of different ways you can score points. One of the things I really like about this game is the push your luck element to it, where when you start kind of filtering down your grid and not having much options left, you can choose to back out the game and not place any more grids, or you can keep playing. However, every time you roll and you cannot place a square or a box on your player sheet, then you're going to keep on scoring negative 3 points. So I like the way that works. You should decide when to keep committing to things and when to back out, and you don't have much mitigation to get around that. At number 7, I have Switch and Signal, which is a cooperative train logistics game. So quite a niche product here, as you have all these different trains spawning on these different spots. Every now and then these trains are going to move automatically, and your job as the players is to work together by playing these cards to adjust these switches and signals to guide these trains smoothly to their destination. And that's all the game is, but it's a pretty tense game. You have very limited time to pull off these pick and deliver mechanisms. And I like the way that you have to manage your cards carefully, keep all the trains flowing, stop any wastage of movement, because every time you waste movement, you're going to shed these time tokens, which can mean you deplete your cards, which brings the game to an end. So you want to be, again, as efficient as you can. I have reviewed this game already, so be sure to check that one out if you have any interest in this one. But for a cooperative game, this one has a complete different niche and a different feel to any game out there. A great solo game as well, if you want to completely take ownership of the puzzle. And I like it a lot. Very simple system. My only concerns that stop this one very narrowly, in fact, getting a shield of quality, is that I do have some pretty big concerns in terms of the replayability factor. Only 2 maps come with the game, one of which is pretty much an intro mode, and the other of which is, again, once you've played it, you're going to know exactly how that map looks. So I'd love to see some more maps come out on this one with unique features on them. Okay, so let's get into the top 6 then, and this is where my shields of quality are starting to get distributed. So at number 6, I have the oldest game by far on this list. From 1971, I have Sleuth, which is a Sid Saxon classic deduction style game. You think of something like Clue or Cluedo, but this one you don't have a board or anything, you just have cards, and you're trying to deduce what the missing gem is from this deck of cards. It's either going to be, well, these cards come in different kind of categories of information. You've got the gems themselves, you've got like diamonds, you've got opals and pearls. They come in different cluster types. You get like 3s, 2s and 1s, and they also come in different colours. And I love the fact that in this game you actually have 4 different options in which you can ask to any player at any time. So you do not have to actually think of the questions. You have fixed questions you can ask. And from these questions, you're just ticking things off, asking things to other people. When you ask certain categories of questions to other people, you get perfect information, but the other people who aren't involved in that question get limited information. But regardless, every single question you have the optional, at least the potential, to tick something off your sheet. And of course, the first person to guess the missing gem or jewellery piece will be the winner. This is as pure as deduction gets. True to itself, simple, boiled down deduction, and it just works. It can be pretty brain burnery if you don't, denote things perfectly on a player sheet. And as usual, it is quite a fragile game, as a lot of deduction games are, where if you give a wrong clue or by mistake, then the whole game falls flat and it'll basically break the game. But I've yet to have that problem, and I think it's an absolute blast. At number 5, I have another roll and write style game. This is Get On Board. So this is actually the updated version or the re-implementation of Let's Make a Bus Route by Sashi. But now this is much widely available, and it comes in a nice new edition. But this one, you are basically trying to plan a bus route out and collect passengers as you go, and drop them off at different locations and get points in different ways. The ways you score points in this game are ultra simple, But you do have some quite tight restrictions in this game, as every time or every round you're going to draw a card from the top of the deck, and that's going to show which track you can lay. And you have got ways you can mitigate that, but you're going to start scoring negative points. And you're always going to score negative points if you start sharing track or sharing the same roads as other people. I love the way that you can have long threads of strategy here by starting with a big destination and ending up somewhere else halfway across the map or right across the other side of the map. Or you can completely ignore that and focus on other ways to score points. A really breezy experience. You get played in 30 minutes, some good decisions. It feels fun, it feels charming, and I like it a lot. So this has been a consistent hit since I played it at the start of the month. I'm hitting the table regularly, and a very strong experience to be had in half an hour, or maybe even just slightly less than that. But I think if you like simple filler games, then get on board. It's something you should at least take a look at because it's wonderful. And check out my review if you're not so familiar with it. At number 4, I have Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. So another game from this year. Now this is the kind of sequel or the next in line from the Blitzkrieg system by Paolo Mori. This one, however, is a area majority style game. As you're drawing these tokens from your bag, you're placing them on these different regions on the map. However, each of these spots you put your discs on kind of encroaches on 2 different regions. So some of these tokens are kind of divided in half. On one side, you're going to have one number, on one half, you're going to have another number, and that's going to impact the influence you have in each of these regions. So if you're going to go high in one, you might have to go low in another. Maybe some of them are balanced. And when you complete regions, you're going to get abilities to kind of tap with other people's board or get these cool special tokens. Lots of things to be had here. One of the best examples of a streamlined area majority, area control style game. And not many area majority games play well at 2 players, where this one is tailor-made for 2 players, and I have to say it just pulls it off to a very high standard. I was massively impressed with the way this plays. A tremendous amount of depth to be had in 20 minutes. Every decision in this game feels agonising. You want the tokens, you want to complete the regions to have the majority in them. Of course, you want to win the game by shedding your tokens quicker. You want adjacency bonuses. Wow, this game has it all, and it might be one of the best ratios in terms of time and depth out there. So another game I've already reviewed, so be sure to check out Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. Okay, so let's get into the top 3. So at number 3 goes to The Estates, which is an ultra cutthroat bidding auction style game with a really strong economic edge to it. So this game is actually a closed economy game where no more money joins the game throughout the game, and in fact money can actually bleed out of the game, making the money tighter and tighter and more valuable. But ultimately in this game you're trying to build these different office blocks of certain colours, and once you build a certain colour you're going to be the owner of that colour. And then you're building up 3 different rows of these buildings, but only 2 of those rows are going to score positively when they're completed, and the third one is actually going to score negative points. So this is a constant jockeying for position style game where you want to kind of hedge your bets by spreading yourself out to make sure you score something, but not committing too much for all of them, because at least one of those rows you're going to score negative points for. But you can end up buying things just to stop your opponents from having them. You can even extend these barriers to make the rows the rows longer or shorter. You can even buy this thing that doubles the points. A brilliant degree of cash flow in this game, as you've got to be very careful about what you spend, because what you spend goes to the other players and can put them in a stronger position for even more powerful bricks or roofs or these bonus pieces going forward. So this game has layers upon layers of depth. It's definitely a dynamic game where 1 minute you're in a strong position, the next minute you're in a weak position, and it's just, again, playing your cards right and not wasting your money. This is a brilliant game. I think you do have to have the right group, or at least be in the right mindset to get the most out of it, because you have to be prepared to be a bit nasty and get your claws out. But despite that, I'm not the most confrontational style of gamer, but I like the level of interaction in this game, because you actually do things and you're buying things not only to hurt other people, but when you hurt other people, you're actually helping yourself and you're not doing it just to be spiteful. At number 2, I've gone back to a bit of a classic Euro with St. Petersburg. So this has been a grail game for me for a long time, very hard to come by nowadays, and this is the 2nd edition of the game. So St. Petersburg is a pretty simple tableau style builder game, and you're just collecting cards, open drafting from them, paying money to do so, but then putting them in front of you to build up a whole kind of display of characters. And these characters are pretty much only going to have two different types of currency on them. They're going to have either money, to give you more money as you go throughout the game, or victory points. But balancing the two is a key feature of the game, because at the end of each of these phases are all associated to a different coloured deck. You are going to get the output from these characters. So you do the red phase, you buy your characters, then all your red characters will pay out. Then you go to the next phase, you buy those characters, then all they will pay out, and even your existing ones will pay out as well. So despite being so simple in terms of only having two currencies, the pacing of the game is ultra interesting, because you might pay a lot for this character. It'll pay out now, but it won't pay out again until it gets all the way around the board. So is it too expensive? Do I need more cash flow for to get through the other rounds? Is it worth me holding back and just pacing myself in terms of getting more money and buying smaller characters as you go? It's so clever, and it's one of those games that's definitely better than the sum of its parts. Reading the rulebook, I was thinking, is this all there is to this game? I can't really see it being great, but after playing it a few times, I think, this is something special. I'm so impressed by it. The second edition comes with a market as well, where you are climbing tracks and things and getting, being the leader is going to get you bonus points. And I think that is quite a core part of the game, and I'd always play with that option. Very impressed. That's all I can say. Hopefully I'll get time to record a review shortly, because I want to share with you how good this game is. And my best game of the month, and the only game that has earned my elite shield, goes to Kaylas. So Kaylas is a kind of a throwback worker placement game, beige Euro, all mechanisms, no artwork, very boring and bland to look at, but I'll tell you what, the gameplay here is outstanding. So worker placement games for me are very hit or miss. I either feel like they're incredibly generic, I think a lot of them feel exactly the same, or they have to be something special. Kaylas, I think, is something special. And that's quite interesting to say, because on the face of it, there's not a tremendous amount different from a lot of other worker placement games out there, that Kaylas offers. But what this game does, it manages to do to an ultra high standard. The economy in this game is very tight. Money is a really hard resource to manage, because every single worker you place on the board, it costs you a coin. And as people start to pass out the rounds, every worker placement costs you an extra coin. So I love that passing mechanism. I think it's probably my favourite feature of the game. You are constantly building the board in this game, creating new worker placement spots, which will invite other players. But if other people use your buildings, you get victory points, or you can get resources. You are donating resources to build the castle, and getting climbing tracks and getting bonuses and things by donating the most. And I suppose another one of the key features of the game is this provost marker. So there is this white pawn that goes on the main track of the board, and one of the worker placement spots is to move this provost up or down the track. And what that means is that when it lands on a spot, anything past that people have already placed their workers on are not going to activate. So you can be a bit of a dick and go to a spot and just do it to cut other people off their worker placement spots, and make them waste their money and waste their time from placing that worker. So again, this is definitely walking on that knife edge of what I'm comfortable with in terms of confrontational player interaction, but I do think it's quite a key part of the game. And while it's something I won't completely focus on, it's something you have to be conscious of. And if you have a bunch of gamers who really do like that cutthroat nature, getting each other's faces and just doing things in spite, then you're probably going to like this worker placement game a lot more than the other ones out there. But even if that isn't your cup of tea, the game itself built around that is wonderfully well designed. And a lot of purist, more Eurogamers will definitely shout from the rooftops and say how well Kaylas still holds up now, and I have to say I agree with that. And I was very impressed. I think the only slight thing that's wrong with it is that it does take a little bit too long. I would like it to be 10 to 15%, maybe even 20% shorter. But despite that, by the end of the game, I certainly feel like it was time well spent. And it doesn't feel like it's taken too long or outstayed its welcome. I just wish it was closer towards that 90-minute mark rather than that 120-minute mark. So there we have it. Those are 21 new board games that I played this month. Hopefully there's something on here that's caught your interest. As always, I will be eventually getting content out for each of these games, so be patient with me. I've got a lot of games to go through, and I'll obviously prioritize ones over others. But as always, if you have enjoyed my content, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. Additionally, if you want to go that extra step, then you can check out my Patreon page. I'm always welcome to take on more Patreons. And be sure to check out the show's sponsor as well, kienda.co.uk.